The elections in the United States are going to change everything for Black Americans. The long-awaited slavery reparation is now on the election agenda, and various political classes are thinking of offering reparation in return for Black people's mandate. We are seeing Black people demanding what's rightfully theirs from the person who wants their votes. However, the question of who will pay the reparation comes up. Even though the upcoming government would like to pay slavery reparation, where would they bring about $14 trillion from? Well, a new idea is being thought about that will offer reparations to Black Americans. So, what is it, and how will it work? Let's find out in this video.
The Black History Archives.
Today, slavery reparation has become a fairy tale for many. Unfortunately, even Black people have become somewhat disillusioned about it. They believe that it's something that will never be paid, a promise that will never be kept. However, nobody thinks that it's exactly what they want Black people to feel. They have deliberately pushed away the slavery reparation for so long that today, even Black people are not ready to accept it's a valid demand. Honestly, that's concerning. Instead of allowing the United States to get away with it, Black people have to unite and collectively demand reparations. It has to be the #1 demand from whomever they think is suitable for president. And then comes the matter of who should pay reparations. If we assume that Black people will unite, as they were under Martin Luther King Jr., they can literally move mountains. Instead of just demanding reparations, they can offer a practical strategy of how reparation money should be collected and paid. Every United States government has always used the lack of funds as an excuse to get away with the demand. Perhaps it's valid because $14 trillion is more than half of the United States GDP. However, as Black people are ready to cooperate, the United States government should be ready to do so too. That's where the idea of using slave owners' land to pay for slavery reparation comes in. But no sooner is the idea presented than people start to criticize. It's said that children of slave owners should not be punished for the deeds of their ancestors. Well, that's understandable. However, if slave owners' descendants do not want to be accountable for slavery, why are they comfortable with inheriting the money and property made through slavery? What's more, taking their property is not a punishment at all. In a true sense, punishment would be to bring them to trial and press charges of slavery on them. This is not being done to them at all. They are only being asked to give back the property made through slavery, and that's it. There is no punishment involved in it at all. Today, neither the Black slaves who suffered nor the white slave owners who benefited from slavery are present. However, both left their descendants. But that's not the only thing they left. They also left properties and assets, representing the stored value saved by not paying the slaves. Black slaves would work the entire day in plantations under scorching sun to cultivate and harvest crops. When sold, only slave owners were the ones to make a profit. Slave owners were just given food that too was insufficient. The profit and value created by slavery were more, and therefore today, we are seeing slave owners' descendants enjoying the properties and assets they don't deserve. Allowing them to keep these properties directly means supporting slavery and having no regret about what was done in the past. Here's a reminder to please support us so we can make more videos for you by subscribing to our channel and giving the video a like. We want to build a strong community and we need your support. Let's continue now. The question is, who is the rightful owner of the property created through slavery? Whether the slave owner's descendants or the slave's descendants? Well, the answer seems quite clear. The idea that descendants of slaves rightfully possess the property obtained through slavery, which the descendants of slave owners have inherited, is rooted in various ethical, legal, and historical factors. Firstly, the accumulation of wealth from the exploitation of enslaved labor represents an unjust enrichment. Black slaves were robbed of their labor and denied the opportunity to benefit from their work, meaning that the profits gained from their labor rightly belonged to their descendants as the legitimate heirs to this unfairly obtained labor. Secondly, slavery was not only a violation of human rights, but also a structured and institutionalized form of oppression. The wealth amassed by slave owners was built on the suffering of Black slaves who endured harsh treatment, exploitation, and violence. Recognizing that historical injustice of slavery requires acknowledging the rightful entitlement of descendants of slaves to the wealth generated through the forced labor of their ancestors. Thirdly, legal systems, in certain instances, have recognized the principle of restitution for past wrongdoings. Reparations have been awarded to groups who have experienced historical atrocities, such as indigenous peoples displaced from their lands. Similarly, descendants of slaves have a legitimate right to reparations for the economic exploitation and deprivation suffered by their ancestors. Furthermore, the legacy of slavery perpetuates social and economic disparities between descendants of slaves and descendants of slave owners. The transfer of wealth and privilege from slave owners to their descendants over generations has contributed to the continuation of inequality. Bridging this divide necessitates acknowledging the rightful ownership of resources and wealth by descendants of slaves. From a moral perspective, recognizing the rightful ownership of property generated through slavery by descendants of slaves is a matter of justice and reimbursement. It acknowledges the harm inflicted on individuals and communities through centuries of exploitation and oppression. Returning ownership rights to descendants of slaves not only corrects past injustices, but also progresses toward promoting the quality and healing historical wounds. However, sabotaging reparation efforts and calling the properties made through slavery their own shows insensitivity. Many descendants of slave owners have inherited wealth and privilege from the exploitation of enslaved labor, giving them continuous advantages and opportunities not available to descendants of the enslaved. Acknowledging this historical advantage highlights the moral duty to confront the enduring impacts of slavery. Even if individuals today didn't directly participate in slavery, they are still tied to its legacy through family connections. Recognizing this tie and taking responsibility for the actions of ancestors is crucial for fostering reconciliation and healing past wounds. Descendants of slave owners still reap the benefits of economic, social, and political advantages gained through exploiting enslaved labor. In this context, reparations serve to correct this historical injustice by redistributing wealth and resources to those historically marginalized and oppressed. Reparations also hold the potential to promote social unity and greater justice within society by addressing the harm caused by slavery and actively working to diminish its long-term effects. Throughout history, societies have recognized the importance of providing reparations to groups who have suffered from injustice and oppression. But how can Black people convey this idea about reparation to the power holders in the United States? Well, that's where we have to confess. It's vital to acknowledge that the lack of progress in securing reparations for Black Americans in the United States cannot solely be attributed to external factors or the actions of others. While systemic racism, political opposition, and historical injustices undoubtedly contribute to the challenges, there are also internal dynamics within the Black community that hinder efforts towards reparations. It's not something we should be aggressive and defensive about. Rather, we should learn from it. A significant factor is the lack of unity and cohesive political action within the Black community regarding reparations. Over time, there has been a range of opinions and strategies among Black activists and leaders on the best approach to address reparations. This lack of a unified political stance has made it easier for policymakers to overlook or downplay the significance of the issue. But now, Black people have to agree on the concept that slave owners' descendants should pay slavery reparation. However, it's important to note ongoing efforts within the Black community to advocate for reparations, including grassroots activism, academic research, and legal initiatives. Organizations like the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America have been actively working for years to raise awareness and build support for reparations. To effectively advance the cause of reparations, coordination and mobilization within the Black community need to be improved, and strategic partnerships with other social justice movements need to be established. This involves forming alliances with allies who advocate for reparations and using political influence through voting, advocacy, and direct action. Ultimately, achieving reparations for Black Americans in the United States will require both external pressure on policymakers and internal solidarity and mobilization within the Black community. By uniting around a common agenda and prioritizing reparations, Black Americans can amplify their voices and demand the restitution and justice they rightly deserve. It seems unreal, but Black people are just one step away from getting reparations. And that step is to have a collective demand. Instead of collectively saying reparation is not practical and possible, the focus should be on demanding reparation politically. Presidential candidates who love to lay claim on black people's votes should be candidly asked to make reparation their agenda. Only then would they be given votes. However, if reparation is not put on the agenda, black people should collectively boycott elections. This will mean 49 million people. This will shake the government to the very core, and it has to address this sooner than the non-essential matters it has engaged itself in. If this does not work, black people have to reach the courts. The point is that black people have to unite as they were under Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership. Slavery reparation demand is to be believed legitimate because if black people themselves are doubtful about it, there is little chance non-black policymakers would pay any attention to it. Earlier, demanding $14 trillion from the budget seemed impractical, but now, after the idea of slave owners' property, it's as practical as the United States itself. Given that slavery produced properties and assets worth hundreds of trillions of dollars, demanding only $14 trillion is like demanding peanuts. What do you think? Should black Americans demand only $14 trillion or all the slave owners' properties worth hundreds of trillions of dollars? Isn't it true that the children of slave owners who gained from slavery should pay reparations? In the comments section right below, show your support for reparations to make it an election agenda. Would you like us to make more videos? If yes, please support us by subscribing to the Black History Archives and clicking the bell icon. You can check out more videos on our channel too.